G'day my friends, Marty here from martysgarden.com.au, and look, I've got a worm farm here because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make your very own worm casting. I've got a worm casting recipe and also how to set it up so you can create your own liquid tea that comes out of this to fertilise your plants so it doesn't get all smelly and wet and the worms just go nuts, breed on for you, and you get lots and lots of free fresh fertiliser at home. That is the bomb. Just before we start the video, I want to thank and welcome all you newcomers to the Marty's Garden channel. If you want to learn more about growing fresh food fast in urban places and small spaces and micro farming, then please consider subscribing before you go. You'll see a bell button which will be in the subscribe area. If you click that, you'll get notified every time I bring out a new video. So what are we going to need to get started? Well, firstly, we need a 3-tier worm farm. So you've got your top, your middle section, and then your tank down below, and it's got to have a tap because we want to be collecting that liquid as it comes through, and I'll show you further on in that video. You also want one of these mats that go on top of the worm farms. That really helps with the egg laying, and they cost about $10 extra. You don't get them with the worm farms. Now, inside the worm farm, you get a block of peat. I will not be using that. I'm going to be replacing it with something that's much better for the worms and will produce much better castings, and the worms will eat it a lot faster. It's just worth the extra money. So I've got a bag of compost here, and it's actually mushroom compost. And they absolutely love this stuff, and it makes the best worm tea and castings around because it's just full of nutrition, very nutrient dense. And I've also got a bag of cow manure here. Now this old dried cow manure. Now I went to the local soil nursery to pick this up. I didn't buy this from any of the local hardwares or anything like that. This is locally driven, but you can get it from lots of different shops. Just make sure when you buy your cow manure, don't get that stuff that's blended in, and avoid sort of like cheap blends and things like that. Get the best organic composted cow manure that you can. Now the reason being is because when they eat this, they create another microbe by passing it through their gut. Cows actually have 2 stomachs, so when they pass it through their stomach, it's really broken down. But the older it is, the better it will work. And once they start eating at those worms, there's no looking back. The next thing you're going to need is compost worms. I've got 1,000 worms in this box. They're actually tiger worms, and they're the ones that I like for this climate. They're a pretty good all-rounder for most climates. There's lots of different types of composting worms out there. Avoid earthworms. They really don't consume the food that you need, and they don't do the same job as a composting worm does. Now, you need at least 1,000 worms to get started. So, I'm going to get into this. $1,000 worms, eggs and casting. Look, there's a worm there straight away. How cool is that? Time to go add it to the worm farm. So this is a bag of really composted cow manure. Now look at this compared to this, which come in the box that I bought, to that. they are just going to go nuts on that fresh stuff. And there's actually, in here, there are compost worms in here. He told me there'd probably be a few hundred. He was getting them, as I was getting it packed up, bagged up, they were in this. So I'm just going to spread this over the top for all of them to eat. And just get it as nice as even as possible before I put the worm blanket down. So this has been sitting for 24 hours, this water, a little bit longer, and anything that's in there, any chemicals, you know, such as chlorine and fluoride and things, we've dissipated out by now. And, you know, the best stuff is rainwater, obviously, but I need to keep these guys wet, and I've got to keep this mat wet all at the same time as well. So I'm going to actually soak this. I'm going to fill it right up as much as I can. I'll put that whole bucket in there. I want to get it really moist. And what's going to happen is, if this tap is on, which it is now, it's going to flow out my first light of liquid tea. It's going to pick up whatever nutrients is in there. So that's the second time it's gone through, and that'll do, and I'll put it back through again, some of this back through again tomorrow morning, not the whole lot. I'm going to use some of this in the garden, on my container plants mostly for the beginning. So you may be wondering, well, what's in this recipe? Well, basically, it's any type of really good compost that you can get. I've used mushroom compost, and then I've thrown in a couple of handfuls of rock dust. If you don't have rock dust, don't worry about it. But it is good if you have some, because the minerals will break down and leach every time the water gets poured through. Also, and then I'm using some coffee grounds, so a few handfuls of coffee grounds. That helps them digest all the food that's in there. It's good for their gut. And then I'm using the cow manure, a good quality cow manure that I know hasn't been gone through with any worming for the animals, which is going to kill the worms. And then I'm pouring water through, which is, I'm using town water, but it's sitting for about 24 hours, and then all dissipated, all the bad stuff out of it, and pouring it through. And each time, it'll be really dark at first, it'll get lighter and lighter, but as the worms are breaking it down, turning into castings, the castings are also soluble, so some of that will actually break down as you pour the water through, go into your bucket down below, and produce a really good liquid fertilizer that you can put on your plants. Be careful not to spray it onto leafy greens that you're going to eat that day or in a few days without washing it off, because you could end up with, there are E. coli problems around if you don't know exactly what's in your compost or how it's being composted. And also, when you're actually feeding the worms, don't feed them too much at once. Let them sort of eat it up, most of it, and then put it on, and then your worm farm won't get all wet and smelly. And look, before we go, I want to talk about sharing. There's a guy called London Worms, and I'm going to leave a link for it down below. He has a great channel and plenty about worm farming, and I've always watched his videos. I really enjoy him, and you know, he knows a lot about worm farming, so I'm going to leave a link down below for that. And also, I've got another video called How Does a Worm Farm Work, and that explains exactly how the worm farm works, and it's quite a popular video. I did it about 4 years ago. So that'll be down in the link below as well, and you can watch those, learn more about worm farming, and start putting it into your garden so you can get fresh castings just like in this recipe that are really healthy for your plants. It builds up the biology in your garden, it provides all the microbes and healthy things that your plants need, and also it's great on seedlings, and it will save you a lot of money over time. Alright, I'm Marty Ware from Marty's Garden. Click on that bell button in the subscribe area. Leave a comment down below if you're interested in worm farming, or if you're doing it already, or you got some tips and tricks that you'd like to add down below. Love to hear from you all, and I'm sure the community would too. There's plenty going on behind here on the scenes, behind Marty's garden. I'm looking into the micro farming, sort of tray farming style of things again, and setting up possibly some education systems to help small urban gardeners get started and grow more fresh food at home so they can sell it and make a bit of money on the side, or even go into it full time. I'm going to be scooting around a few little farms around the place, doing some stuff in the backyard. One video a week at the moment, guys, because I'm a bit snowed under with everything that's going on, and they'll come out on the weekends. All right, so don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you at the next video real soon. I want to hear from you down below, guys. Bye for now.